Welcome back to Le Mans. Let's take a look at some highlights from our first 13 and a half hours. The start, all Audi, the all-important photos. However, for the Courage, number 17, a quick spin. Nice bit of evasive action, keeps that car in one piece. However, the DAMS, one of the DAMS, Cadillac's big fire. Driver okay, car in dire straits. In the second hour, the action certainly continued. After David Brabham had gone to the lead in the Panoz, a nice job by Alan McNish running him down, going back to the front. Problems, though, for the factory Cadillac team. First in the pits, where they ran afoul of some tires from the Corvette. Then Eric Van de Poele got it wrong in the first chicane on the Mulsanne. It came around, got into the barriers. A quick fix, they were back and underway. Then, number 9, this is Ortelli. Leading at the time, the car around. There's maybe the luckiest break. It could have been much worse than that. He continued. 3 hours later, the magic of Audi and Reinhold Jost. A gearbox problem. All right, that usually takes a lot of time. Not for Jost and Audi. They bring the back off the car, take one entire unit off, put another one on. The time under 4 minutes. That's about 2 laps lost, and the car is back out and on the way. Absolutely phenomenal. And there's McNish taking off. Now, 3 hours further on, the team car, same scenario, same problem. Although not as quick, they made this change in just slightly over 5 minutes. And that car, with Ronaldo Capello on board, continued on. The approach of Jost and the Audi program, absolutely phenomenal. Not perhaps surprising, considering Reinhold Jost, but immensely impressive.
Yeah, well, he had pre-thought everything that could possibly happen and had something arranged to do something about it. As we've said earlier, that's what makes him so special. He thinks out what can happen to his cars and what's he going to do. So they changed the whole back of the car. I mean, it's a quicker thing to change the whole back than to do what Panoz have to do, which is to take their gearbox to pieces, poor old things, get the spare bits and put them in. Like changing the clusters takes ages. Changing the whole back end, that's the gearbox, the bell housing, the rear suspension, the uprights, the brakes, the wing support, the whole darn lot in one go. Much, much quicker.
Let's finish that email real quick that Dave Burlekamp sent from North Royalton, Ohio. What do the drivers do when they're not in the cars? And generally, on the average, if you can give that a number, how many hours does each driver put in? But more importantly, what happens when they're not in the cars?
Well, try and take it easy. I mean, that's right, isn't it, Danny? Yeah. You stroll off and try and get something to eat. So you're just... Pirro, for instance, was eating some spaghetti with a little tomato sauce on it. And then he had some water. I noticed he put quite a bit of salt on his spaghetti. That's obviously to replace... they didn't look like a perspiring man to me. But, yeah, you eat and you drink and you take it easy. What do you used to do, Danny?
Well, of course, you have something to eat, then you try to get cleaned up, change your clothes, get out of the wet clothes because they're obviously sweaty. Change that, lay down a little bit, have a little bit of a debrief probably before that, lay down. You usually don't have very much time because by the time you're just getting relaxed and getting unwound, you got to start getting ready again because you could get called for the next stint. Now, some of these guys are doing triple stints. That gives the driver a little bit more time for relaxation. But what we also saw earlier is sometimes the driver's standing there ready to go. The other driver comes in, says, no, I'm fine. He has to then take his gear back off, sit back down, and wait again. But really, for 24 hours, you're up, you're thinking about it. You may be laying down, but you're thinking about it. You're listening. You're thinking about what you're going to do when you get back in the car all the time.
They got physiotherapy available too, don't forget, because you can end up, especially on a hot day, pins and needles in your legs, cramped muscles, fingers where the blood's run out, they've all gone white. So they have guys there to massage the fingers back in shape, massage the toes back in shape, even massage the brain back in shape.
Very true. The 4th place, number 3, DAMS Cadillac is in. And a quick look at the back, but this looks like a fairly routine stop. And earlier, Andrew, we were extolling the virtues and the talents of young Johnny Mollem. Well, you're with him.
Yes, we were extolling the virtues and talents of Johnny Mollem. He's just completed his first night at Le Mans because this is his first time here, although he's raced at Daytona. How was your first night here, Johnny?
Yeah, it was a double stint as well, so I'm knackered. But no, it's going okay. We're actually... we're picking up places. We had a small off early on in the race, which is a bit unfortunate. We had to put a different rear wing on. So we're having to sort of put more and more rear downforce into the car. And the car's getting marginally better, but the problem now is I think we're losing damper fluid, brake fluid, and power steering fluid. So we got a few problems with the front end of the car, especially on full tanks. It's very, very tricky. I'm having to brake a good 100 meters earlier than I normally do. But towards the end, when the fuel load lightens, we were doing pretty good race times.
Johnny Molan leaking, well, his car leaking from every orifice, gentlemen.
But you know, that's the very right approach that Johnny's got there. You see, he's got a problem with the car, and rather than make a fuss about it, he's driving around the problem. You know, he's coping with the steering, and he's braking early. See, Le Mans is often about that. It's being able to make the best of what you have got, not moan about what you haven't got. So if you haven't got sort of perfection with your car, well, just make do with excellence or even adequacy, but get on with it. Keep the car out there, keep it circulating.
Well, they say, don't they, gents, that one of the biggest things about endurance racing with multiple drivers, it's the ultimate compromise. The car's not perfect for Danny Sullivan, it's not perfect for Linda Cadney, but it's comfortable for both, it's drivable for both, so that there's not big discrepancies when one driver gets out, the other one gets in. I mean, that's where it all starts even, doesn't it?
Well, that's true, but you also, when they're matching the drivers
Right.
in a professional team, they try to match drivers that have a similar driving style and technique. And that's why that chemistry, when they talked about Alan McNish's group of guys, what do they call them, the three musketeers or something like that?
The small group.
The small group. That's why they talked about the chemistry between those three guys. They know what the car is going to do. They know, they trust Alan. He does a lot of the testing. They get it all set up and go.
That's
you mentioned a professional team, by the way, the number 53 Viper, third of the three running 1, 2, 3, 9th, 10th, and 11th overall now. So one more problem up front. It is going to be amazing because you are going to see 3 GTS cars in the top 10 firmly.
And they are, by the way, in numerical order, 51, 52, 53 at the moment.
Which has some significance for that team, amazing.
It does, but I thought Steve said that wasn't going to be the case.
Well, it looks like it is, because they're running like clockwork. All 3 Vipers after, what, we're talking about coming up 14 hours of the race, all on the same lap.
Yeah, but I think Steve knew something.
Well, it's possible. Steve, did you know something?
No, actually, I was just flat wrong. But the 53 car is in. David Anio takes over the steering wheel and they're finally going to work on the brakes. We wondered when this was going to happen. The 52 car also comes in behind 53. It is normal for a car this heavy to have to change brakes. A lot of the prototype cars can run the entire 24 hours with the same brakes, not these cars. They'll probably change out at least the calipers, if not the discs as well. And this is something that's part of their battle plan. Not surprising at all.
What I noticed, though, Steve, is they're actually bleeding the brakes as well, front and rear together. So I think he's had a spongy pedal. Maybe the rotors are okay, the pads are okay, but they're bleeding the front and the rear together. That's so they get a nice full stroke of the pedal, try and get any air that's in there out. You must have spongy brakes.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. Right now, we're seeing a bit of symmetry as we look at the overall Le Mans prototype class and the GTS class. It is the 3 Audis running 1, 2, 3 overall and in Le Mans prototype, and it's the 3 Vipers running 1, 2, 3 in the GTS class at this point. And of course, we have Porsches running 1, 2, 3 in the GT division, although they are not running in formation. There are some cars that have snuck in between due to some of the problems. So the number 52 car in as well, Steve.
Yeah, it was, but let's go back to the 53. If you've ever bled the brakes in a car, you know that somebody has to put pressure on the pedal so that the fluid will bleed out. And that's what they're doing here with hand signals. They tell David Donahue when to push on the brake. When they say stop, they bleed it out, trying to get some air out, and they tell him to do it over and over again. I don't see them adding any brake fluid, though, Alan.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because if you're going to take fluid out of the system, it should be going in somewhere. I hope they remember to do that.
Well, it depends on where the filler is. We can't see in this shot everybody. You have a central reservoir. I don't know if it's at the back of the car. Maybe Steve can help us. I don't know.
They could be putting it under pressure, but the one thing you don't want to do, as we all know, when you bleed brakes, is pump all the fluid out, because suddenly that air you're trying to get rid of flushes back in. You have a real big problem then.
This is not a standard stop or a standard change during the race. You don't bleed, right? This is going to drop them down. Of course, of the Chrysler Vipers, they are running in third of the 3, so it won't affect their position in that category, except it might help the car below that, which is one of the Panos' move in front of them.
Yeah.
And that's possible. We'll take a look at that when we come back. It's also possible it's a lot quicker to bleed the brakes than change the brakes. They might be trying to delay something, but it may be delaying the inevitable just a little bit. We'll know.
welcome back. Well, just as we went to the break, you saw a rather touching little scenario here in the garage of the Nissan Porsche. So they got the list of all the runners, and then as they retire, they cross them off, and they're hoping that those cars are all going to drop out and they're going to win. But let's just pan across here to the rest of the wall. Using a bit of racer tape, you've got the guy's balaclava here, and then one of the Japanese drivers, he wears glasses, so here's his glasses case into the wall. Amazing stuff here in the Nissan garage.
That's all valuable racing memorabilia, Andrew. You know, that'll all be coming up at auction one day with big money prices on it. That's the genuine evidence that, yes, it was here at Le Mans.
Well, at least he knows where all of those are in a hurry here. Got a question for you off of email. Joe Wallish and Ryan Chernomas are wondering, and Alan, we'll let you do this one. What does La Sarthe translate to?
Well, La Sarthe is named after a river, basically. The Sarthe is a river, and the Sarthe is a department here in France, rather like a county would be back in the States. So it's a county named after its local river.
And Danny, here's one from Carl Azevedo, apparently somebody you might know. He says, you might want to relate how back before they rebuilt the pit garages in '89, the crowds were so big they had to use a rope to corral all of them and physically pull them out of the way for the car to enter and exit the pit stall. That's obviously been rectified.
Well, to some extent it has, but they still do that. You'll see some of the crews out there when they practice or whatever, and the guy will come running around with a rope to pull some people back because they're not paying attention. Before, it was really bad, and it was very, very narrow. And the French government, of course, has done a tremendous job here of making this facility state-of-the-art.
Yeah, the French are very good at that. You know, the state here put aside huge sums of money to improve things that are typically French. So this is one of them. I mean, all these grandstands and everything that's been built here have all been built on French state money. It's very good of them, in fact, to do that.
There is an email here that I might even be able to handle, so I'll try it. It comes from Kwame Turner, and it says, how much fuel does each team use throughout the 24-hour race? You can only go in generalizations because every team uses a little bit different in the allotment, but the Le Mans prototype cars, 90 liters is what they're allotted. Figure maybe 30 pit stops and top-ups, so it's about 2,700 liters at about 4 liters per gallon. You could be using up to 700 gallons of fuel to go the 24 hours of Le Mans. That's all rough estimates, of course. Still, a lot of petrol going through the pumps. Back at Le Mans, the trials and tribulations for the number 11 Panoz. So David Brabham, Jan Magnussen, and Mario Andretti continue. Obviously, the car was back out for a little bit, came back in. Brabham brought it in. You can still see the smoke and steam emanating from the car. The nose off once again. They're continuing to chase that problem. And once you start to drip oil in any kind of quantity, that's generally a fairly difficult repair.
Well, it's not going to go away on its own, is it? I think if it has got crankcase compression due to, let's say, worn rings or something, it's going to keep pumping oil out. And basically, that engine is just going to lose its power slowly but surely. But I think that smoke is causing concern, and I would imagine that's either giving it a problem with its temperature gauges, oil and or water, and possibly the oil pressure as well is suffering. I don't know. They haven't told us. We don't know. But they'll do what they can.
Right. We've talked before, by the way, about how the cameras here are so good in terms of helping generate some light. It looks on the screen a bit brighter than it is, and the real clue on that is still how blinding those headlights are when you see them. It's darker than it actually appears on the screen, but it is quickly lightening up here and at Le Mans, but the drivers still have those headlights blazing, and for good reason. You may have been wondering why, if it's this bright, do they continue to use the juice up of the headlights? Well, that's why, of course, and it is bright enough, though, apparently, for the light meters to come back out and let the photographers get to work. Danny?
Well, one other thing as well is that it helps when they're passing a slower car. You like to leave those lights on. They can see the car coming up. It's something to give them a little warning. They probably won't turn them off the rest of the time.
And something, too, we probably should have mentioned this a little bit sooner because you may have been wondering, the prototype cars all have the normal bright white clear headlights, but you notice as that car just went through, the third one in line, they're a yellowish tint. All the GT cars have to run an amber headlight so that the prototype cars, when they see them in the mirrors or whatever, or vice versa, more accurately, they know what kind of car it is coming up behind, but they know closing rates in the light.
Well, there was a great comment, though, about that. Was that what you were going to say? One of the guys in the GT2 cars said, what do the LMP cars think? They see the yellow headlights coming up, that I'm going to pass them? You know.
And those amber lights don't generate quite the visibility either. I mean, that's one of the concerns.
That was a big concern. That was a big concern. They said they couldn't see very far with them.
We saw Pescarolo's Courage in the pits there, the Peugeot engine car, of course. It's lying 6th at the moment. It's only a lap behind Panoz number 12. And it's painted in that lime green, which Pescarolo's been associated with all his racing life. I remember the first time I met him and he produced this kind of lime green helmet. And I thought, ugh, what a ghastly color that is. And here we are, 35 years later, and he's painted his whole car on that lime green color. And I look at that lime green car today and I think, ugh, this color's still pretty ghastly.
Alan, if I can just jump in there. In fact, that was when he joined the Matra Formula 3 team. Remember, they had 3 drivers, Jean-Pierre Beltoise, Jean-Pierre Josso, and Henri Pescarolo. Pescarolo had the bright green helmet, and then Josso had the bright orange one, and then a bright blue one there for Jean-Pierre Beltoise, whose son, of course, is in this race. And they were one of the first teams to ever use that kind of colour coding, because on those little Matra Formula 3 cars, they actually had a ring round the nose in the same colour as the driver's helmet.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Andrew. And in fact, the Porsche factory adopted that for their 907 and 908 campaign. They used to have distinguishing day-glow colours on those Porsches. I remember seeing them when I was racing against them as a kid. It was very impressive, that day-glow paint, if you like that sort of thing. It was certainly good for identifying the cars, just not the sort of colour, of course, one would want to wear oneself.
We had a quick look at the #1 Cadillac of Andy Wallace has been pushed back out of the garage and into pit lane, so we expect that car to be back on track. There is your race leader, #8, and Emanuele Pirot got that car absolutely at full song once again, and is racing into the final few hours. Oh, but Wallace, the car has stalled. We'll follow it up when we come back. Welcome back once again to Le Mans. We are in the midst of daybreak in what promises to be an absolutely glorious day. And that only is fitting. And talking with a lot of the locals here, you see how lush and green it is. Of course, it normally is here in this part of France, but perhaps a little bit more so this year. You've been swamped with incredible rains all winter long and even into the spring. This has been forecast as the longest spell over this weekend of dry and sunny weather that they've had in a matter of months. The crowd, as a result, has turned out in immense numbers, and with daylight breaking like this, it is an absolutely beautiful scene, both in terms of the scenery and the colors and the greenery, but also the crowd and their support here. It is perhaps looking at some record numbers. The #2 Cadillac is in. Max Angelelli behind the wheel brings it in, and
it's lying 14th at the moment, Greg, this car. It's obviously had a lot of bad luck so far, but they keep it running.
Yeah. Well, you know, and another car that I thought we should probably make mention of that has quietly been very effective and has now moved up into 7th and carrying the banner for the Panoz Roadsters is the #23 TV Asahi Team Dragon entry of the Kageyama brothers, and in my mind, really the hero of last year's race. You remember when the Toyota was trying to catch that BMW, and the driver, before Ukio Katayama, who's a former Formula 1 driver, you'd expect him to set some fast laps. But a 50-year-old journeyman driver who raced in the Group C in Japan for years, Toshio Suzuki, started throwing down fast laps in the race. Even Martin Brundle, when they interviewed him, said, "We've never seen this pace from the drivers in that team, particularly him." Talk about stepping up. Yep. Well, Suzuki is doing it again. He is part of this very solid drive.
Yes, he's a remarkable man. He upped his game last year incredibly. It was a question of, on that day, on this track, in that car, he was unstoppable. And we may well see the same thing again. When that little guy gets himself fired up, he can go like a rocket, and that's what he's capable of doing.
He's sandwiched, you were talking about, between the two Courages, Henri Pescarolo's entry with the the turbo Peugeot, the number 16 C52, and behind that number 23 Team Dragon Panoz, the number 17, the Courage C60, a superb looking car, and with that Judd engine, an absolute screamer here as well.
They do sound good, I have to say. I think the best sounding cars I've heard here since the days of the old Matras are those Judd engine cars. That 4-litre Grand Prix engine, it screams away, makes a lovely noise. However, one of them's already blown up. Oh, and we have
That's a bad sign when he pulls in at that angle and backs in. He's got a problem now. He's been going around very slowly.
Yeah, Andy Wallace in trouble. They're putting the number 1 factory Cadillac back into the garage. However, there is still the bright light of the DAMS Cadillac that has been doing a great job. And right now, Andrew Marriott is with its lead driver.
Yes, I'm certainly with Eric Bernard. The night was kind to you, Eric.
Yeah, it was really nice. Finally, we had not a lot of problem during the night, just a little small problem around the car, but the night was really perfect for us. We ran since the beginning a little lower to the capacity of the car because we think it's a very special 24 hours. It was really hot and it's a really difficult race to finish today. And we had a basic plan is to running maybe 1 or 2 seconds lower than the potential of the car, and finally for the moment it was a good plane.
That 4th place would be a fantastic result for you.
Yeah, for the moment it's wonderful, but it's a long race and we are not on the end. I cross my finger for to be in the end with this fantastic result. It should be very nice.
Eric, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Boy, I'll tell you, you just do not want to say, yeah, maybe we look good for something in this race, because the minute you do it, I mean, it's almost the automatic jinx scenario, isn't it?
Well, we were talking about how those prizes are running like clockwork, all in numerical order, 51, 52, and 53. What happens? One of them has a problem. I mean, we should maybe keep quiet about that kind of thing and just let everybody get on with it.
Well, the real key is the fact that there is a whole lot of racing left to go.
Oh, yeah.
And these guys know it. They've been there before. We've all been there before. And we've got a great race going right now, but there's still a lot that can happen between now and 4 o'clock.
10 hours. There's 10 hours to go.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's darn near a whole Sebring. 2 hours off.
That's exactly right. The number 64 Corvette in and out. The number 1 Cadillac in and staying for a while here. Andy Wallace stays on board, so hopefully it will be a brief stop. Up front, it's Audis. 1, 2, and 3.
No.
Welcome back to Le Mans, and one of the Audis is in. Andrew.
Yeah, one of the Audis, Alan McNish, has just climbed aboard, just pulling his belts tight. Little Alan McNish from Dumfries. New tyres going on this car. It really does look travel stained. And obviously Alan really wants to win this again, and he's going to try really hard. Audi are letting them all race each other, and that car has just rushed off out of the pits and back onto the racetrack. So Alan McNish still going for it.
Well, Andrew, in terms of raw speed, I mean, Alan McNish has been phenomenal here this weekend. I mean, you're going up against a guy like Tom Christensen. He not only beat out Christensen after they were exactly tied down to the thousandths of a second during the second qualifying on Thursday night. McNish went out, pipped him for pole. Then, in his charge earlier in the race, McNish set the fastest lap of the race at a 3-minute 37.8, the only driver yet to dip into the 3:37s. So Alan McNish, I mentioned it before, is a man on a mission, and it is a mission at an incredibly quick rate.
Oh, he's a quick man, there's no doubt about that. But what I noticed there too is that he jumps straight into the same seat as everybody else uses. Those 3 guys, all the same size, they don't have to fool around changing seats, just have to leap in the car. And Alan showed us around it yesterday. It's very much like a Formula 1 car. You're sitting very, very snugly inside your little carbon fiber monocoque there. And he said it feels just like an F1 car. He's got his paddles
Alan,
on
if I could just jump in
Go
a
ahead,
second.
Andrew.
Everybody keeps saying, oh, they're all the same size. They're not all the same size. Alan McNish is about 5'5", and Laurent Aiello and Stefan Ortelli, I look up to them, and I'm 5'6½". So Alan is the wee one, as they say in Scotland amongst that trio. But meanwhile, here at the number 8 Audi, they're ready for a pit stop. So the Wheeler Christensen Pirro car is about to come in, and everything looking so calm and collected down here, I tell you.
I tell you, Andrew, I'm glad to hear that you're looking up to them, because if you or I could ever drive like them, we'd be lucky men.
Indeed, the number 51 machine in the pits as well, Olivier Beretta bringing it in. He's out of the car, so he's turning it over, but I didn't see who got behind the wheel of that machine. But that car continues to run at the front. And Danny, as you had pointed out, by the way, 51, 52, 9th and 10th. Now, though, there is a car in between them, and it is the 22 Panoz, another of the Team Dragon entries, and it is Dominique Dupuis who has gotten behind the wheel, taking over for the very fast Olivier Beretta. Very routine stop, obviously unfolding here. Boy, the way the Vipers have run, we talk about it. They've won the last 3 FIA GT championships.
Yeah.
They've won the last 3 Le Mans. They've got it figured out. There's just no question.
Well, it's sorted machinery. I mean, it's factory-backed sorted machinery, and they're using a well-proven team. Oreca know absolutely what they're doing. And these new prototypes that they brought out here, not having the best of luck at the moment, but they're brand spanking new. Give them time to get them sorted, they'll get them working. You see, that is really where these big manufacturers are very clever. Chrysler going in with Oreca, great idea. It's worked wonders for them. They go out and they win races. And the same thing with Audi going in with Jost. What a great combination.
A remarkable combination, most certainly. There's one of the independent Vipers, the number 57 entry there. And by the way, folks, we are now 14 hours into the 24 hours of Le Mans, 10 to go. And by the way, on behalf of everybody here at Speed Vision, the entire crew on site here, I know that after being here for a long night and having a full day yet really upon us, we'd all like to say hi to everybody back home. You know who you are, and we're enjoying it here, but we miss you as well. And of course, to all the dads, happy Father's Day. I hope you're enjoying it by watching the unprecedented live coverage of the 24 hours of Le Mans, its 68th running here on Speed Vision. Welcome back to Le Mans, everybody. And we've been talking about the Audis and how incredibly impressive the program has been. Well, of course, the cars are very impressive. And the guy who's been the master of the equipment has been Alan McNish. And earlier, you may have seen this already, but let's take a look at that car with Alan.
Racing cars at Le Mans don't get much more high-tech than the Audi R8R, and I have the very man himself to show me around his example, Alan McNish.
Well, this is the car that set pole position. As you can see, it's actually being repaired, and what we're doing is the final preparations prior to the race. We're going through it. We've changed the engine, the gearbox, so we've got all that system in. But it's a V8 twin turbo. It has got a restricted air restrictor, which is down to 32.4 millimeters, and it has got a maximum boost level of 1 3/4 bar. But we're still producing about just over 600 brake horsepower, which will mean a top speed of about 210 miles per hour at Le Mans. We use Öhlins dampers on the rear, but hanging on the end is a 6-speed longitudinal gearbox, which we don't shift manually with a gear lever. We've actually got paddles on a steering wheel, a la Formula 1, and that makes it significantly easier. It's a stress-membered machine, meaning that we don't have the engine sitting in a cage. The actual engine gearbox assembly bolts completely onto the back of the monocoque of the chassis, and that just means it's a little bit better from its torsional stiffness. The driver sits in a very, very nice little survival cell, and as my illustrious mechanic here shows, it has got, as well as a head restraint on this side and at the back, they have looked at it a little bit further and they've taken the head restraint round the right-hand side as well, so that you have got complete security there in the event that something does go wrong and you do crash into the barrier. This is my steering wheel. As you can see, it has got the little paddles for upshift and downshift. It's quite a thick steering wheel. The reason it's cut off at the bottom is because the cockpits now are so tight, and you have to change drivers with the steering wheel in position. It's necessary that the bottom is not there so you can bend your legs out. You'll remember, Alan, how difficult it is to get in and out with a full steering wheel, and now this makes it easier. We've got various things on there, but most of them are just the normal, the pit speed, the radio, the high beam, the drinks bottle, reverse if necessary, but hopefully not, and neutral. These, I have to say, are illuminated as well. This is special paint so that we can see it in the dark, something not many teams think of. Jost and Audi have thought into the future. They've looked at it. It is going to be dark for about 7 hours. We need to know which buttons we have to press. We also have had to try and combat some of the regulation changes, and they've now got a mandatory 15mm gurney flap on the rear wing. And that means on the big long straights, you know what it's like, you sit there for such a long time. With that, it's a lot of drag. But we've had to then try and counteract our aerodynamics to try and make the same top line speeds. And we've been able to do that. And I think that everything is a little bit in our control at the moment, but then when the race starts, that's when it goes a little bit out of control sometimes.
What really impresses me here in your garage is the fact that whatever happens to this car during the race, you've got instantaneous spare parts. I mean, I think you can change the whole of the back end in, what, 4 minutes?
Well, that was just something that Reinhold used when he joined with Audi. Through his experience from before, he said to them, look, Le Mans is one thing. You can go fast. You need to have a car that's very fast, but you need to have a car that's very reliable. But what happens if your driver has a collision? What happens if you have a gearbox failure? And so they looked into the design, and incorporating that idea, they can actually take the whole back end of the car off from here and replace it, so the gearbox, everything off and back on in under 7 minutes. And that is, you know, means you lose a lap and a half, and maybe just a little bit more. Whereas before, that would mean you're definitely out of the race. So we can combat any unforeseen or hopefully unforeseen situation coming into the race.
I think Alan's very, very aptly covered everything that we could possibly want to know about this car. If anybody's got any more questions, they better email in with them.
And we have seen the proof, the evidence that they can make that change in well under 7 minutes, and it has served them well.
Yes, and isn't Alan McNish impressive? How well versed he is in the machinery that he's driving. He's a very, very professional little man. Not just a great driver on the track, but a great promoter of it.
You mean very, very?
Oh, yes, okay. They're very proud of him up there in Scotland, and quite rightly so, too.
Oh, they should be. What a great story he has been. I mean, obviously, you know, F3000 was impressive, but his career was kind of in the decline. Got an offer to do some testing and help develop the new Porsche GT program. Was very quick in testing. Gave him a shot at Laguna Seca, and he promptly went out and blew everybody out of the water. And since then, the story has just exploded to the top, culminating with his win here in 1998 for the Porsche equipped. He'd like to get his second one, and doing it with another German manufacturer, looking pretty good, at least to be part of a winning team, if not in the winning car here this year at Le Mans. Stories developing down in pit lane. We're going to check in on a few of them. Let's start first. Steve Evans.
Well, Greg, that proud picture hanging in the Viper garage just behind me was taken right after the Viper so dominated the Rolex 24-hour earlier this year, winning overall. 75 people it takes to run the three-car team. And one of the guys in that picture is an engineer named Jerry Malachut, an old friend. And he just told me they've been working very hard on fuel economy. And as of this race, they were getting 2 miles more per pit stop, okay, than they were getting before. And that is absolutely huge when you figure you're looking at an 8.5-mile racetrack. Also been working very hard on brakes. He thinks they may go the distance on brakes, even with that heavy car. He said the most they may have to do is change pads. That's what they're shooting for. Andrew?
Next door to the team with the very big youth budget, Audi, is the team possibly with the smallest. I'm in the pits of the Belter Racing. Now, Dr. W.R. Peugeot is actually built by some Peugeot engineers in their spare time. They do one race a year, they come here, and since 1993 they haven't had a finish. A lot of the time they haven't even qualified. But right now, both cars have come through the night. They're lying in second and third is also the last 2 places in the 6-7-5 category. But let's hope they make it this time.
Yeah, they deserve to, don't they, Andrew, really? I mean, I know those guys, and you're absolutely right. They are engineers for Peugeot, but their great passion, their great love in life is motor racing. So they produce these little cars, which are really quite innovative in many ways, and sometimes they get in the race, sometimes they don't. Well, hey, you're quite right. They're in this race, and wherever they come, so long as they finish, they're going to be happy people. A lot of tears at the end of the race for them.
Oh, unquestionably. You know, with the problems we've been seeing with the 64 and 63 Corvettes, we have a new face in the top 5 in GTS, currently in the 5th spot. It's the Car Sport Holland Chrysler Viper with John Hugenholtz, Mike Hesman, and David Hart have now cracked the top 5 in the Le Mans GTS division. You know, Speed Vision's been here for the better part of a week, but we've been gathering the odd story here and there, doing a little research, getting ready to go. There is a radio team here called Radio Le Mans that have been on the air for every moment the cars have been on the track. They are an absolutely remarkable group of people with a very fun and unusual and effective style of covering a race. And right now, guess what? We're going to just listen in for just a little bit, have some fun here, and listen to the style of a Radio Le Mans.
And then you play the jingle, and then this foreign guy moved in.
See, I can only apologise then. Incidentally, Alan Hyde-Titch, I think we probably could call sort of Toshio Suzuki Hyde, because he has just come back looking very, very Japanese.
Why so?
Because I think it's down to the lack of sleep, frankly.
Ah.
And his eyes have now turned into little slits.
Ah, poor Alan.
It's
yes.
either that or he's an angry man. It's one or the other.
Right, so we're apparently now on speed vision as well, so we're trying to be sensible.
As opposed to on speed.
On speed vision, yes. And you couldn't resist the reference to Ty Curry, could you, Gary? I mean, that one had to be slopped in there. So anyway, what we're watching particularly is the progress of Alan McNish, who is lapping at 3:41s, but also lapping in the 3:41s is the current occupant of car number 7, Michele Alboreto. So Alan isn't being caught, but nor is he catching at any significant rate the leader, who is, of course, Emanuele Pirro in car number 8.
And out of the car and into the clutches of Joe Bradley goes Andy Wallace.
Andy, a bit of a fraught night then, bringing you into the morning. Tell us about the problems with the Cadillac.
Oh, I mean, basically the car's been running really fast. Well, you know, all race long, except we had this problem with the puncher earlier on, which ripped the turbo off, the wing off, the floor off, and we wasted a lot of time there trying to repair that. But just now we had a power steering belt failed or got taken off by something going into turn 1. So first thing, it feels like something's broken when that happens. You can't turn the wheel suddenly. It's very, very heavy. So I just jumped on the brakes, flat spotted all the tyres, and managed to get it round the first corner.
Was that when you pulled out the pit lane?
No, that was the lap before. Then I stopped to get a new power steering belt. We put a new power steering belt on. I left the pits very, very gently in first gear, and first gear destroyed itself going out the pits. We decided not to continue, even though all the other gears are there. We decided not to continue because the pieces from first gear will probably jump in and destroy the others. So now they're changing all the gears, and we'll have a fresh gearbox for the rest of the race.
Isn't this what Le Mans is all about? You know, here we are. What time is it? It's just after 6:15 a.m. There is still a long way to go in this race, and anything can happen, and that's why the guys are working on the car like this.
Well, that's right. I mean, none of us at Cadillac were ever going to give up, so we just keep going. If we can't win this year, we'll learn for next year. But you know, the law is like that sometimes. Our car's had more than its fair share of problems this
Well, obviously, Radio Le Mans, they have a lot of fun with what they're doing. And, of course, you have to remember, folks, it's a little after, as they said, 6 o'clock here in the morning. They've been at it not just for 14 hours, but for 2-3 days in 14 hours, Danny.
Well, they have, but I ran into one or two of those announcers over in the Audi press hospitality tent, where they were over there watching F1 qualifying and a little bit of soccer, or as we say, or football that they do over here, having a few brews over there at the hospitality of Audi, so they know how to do it.
Well, they work hard, and they're therefore, I think, entitled to enjoy themselves. I mean, they were chatting up the very pretty girl who is working for Eurosport over here, Amanda Stretton, whom Speed Vision viewers may remember we used in our Coy's historic race meeting last year. Pretty girl, and there's the Radio Le Mans guys chatting her up. Well, hey, why not? They're all red-blooded men.
We did have a couple of bottles of Rouge to sample the flavor here in France earlier on this evening. We did it properly. I mean, that's the way you're supposed to do it. A little foie gras.
Sure.
And
you come to France, you've got to get into the gastronomic stride as well.
Absolutely.
But I'll tell you something about Radio Le Mans. GM.com gave me a little radio set, which I've got on my belt here. And when I am not sitting here working, I'm wandering around, somewhat dazed, of course, but I have my earplugs in. And when I have my earplugs in, I can listen to Radio Le Mans and keep up with the race. It's very, very useful. And they're on the website, I believe, all around the world. So what with Speed Vision's viewers in the North American market and Radio Le Mans people on the World Wide Web, there's an awful lot of people know what's going on at this year's Le Mans.
Well, and gentlemen, your choice of cuisine and beverage has explained quite a bit, frankly. We have the Porsche update we need to take a quick look at. In the GTS division, there are 2 Porsches, and they are running 19th and 21st overall. The number 59 entry is the Freisinger Motorsport entry, and the number 60. That's the one Tommy Kendall's in, driving with the Conrad equip. In the GT division, 83 Barber leads at 17th overall, 4-lap lead over the number 73. That's the Team Taizan Advan entry that is running second in class, followed by 3 more Porsches. So there's your Porsche update, and with that, we'll step away. We'll be right back. We're back at Le Mans. The number 63 Corvette is back in pit lane, and this stop, after some struggles here, looks like it could very well be routine. They're going after it at this point here. You see the rope that they pulled out, and it kind of gets back to that email question we had. They still tend to rope the areas off just to make sure that the mechanics can get there, do the job fairly unobstructed. And well, you can see right there.
He didn't want that camera right in there, or
he did. Yeah,
it might have been unintentional. They could have, you know.
Yeah.
But they got trying to keep him out of there, and they got to move him back. And you know, because what you don't want to inhibit is once that car is in there and he's ready to go, you don't want anybody standing in front of him, because that might be a couple of seconds of just have hesitation or something like that. You want to get out and go.
Let alone the concern it would give the person that was standing in front as that car tried to leave the pits as well. So it's a safety issue, of course, as well. And there's that number 63 exits the pits. The Courage, that beautiful, Speedy-sponsored C60 with the Judd engine. That car is now up, by the way, into the 8th position, and overall and in the Le Mans Prototype 900 kilo class. And I'm not sure there's a prettier car out there, or one that might sound better. That car has been fast, effective. It had that early spin, another brief problem, but since then it has just run and run and run, proving that this Judd can be a very, very solid enduro.
And just because you spin doesn't mean you can't have a good result.
Right.
Danny, yes.
Tell us about that.
Hey, Danny, yeah. I heard about that guy.
But I just didn't want to take a shot at a guy that spins, because they still stand a chance.
They stand a great chance, and actually Philippe Gache, who is the lead driver and part owner on that team, is proving that with a very solid effort. And you know that is the Judd engine is well, we're underneath. That's one of the Vipers, perhaps.
That's definitely.
Oh, that's the prototype, isn't it? That's the Mopar Sprint engine entry.
Well, you know what's impressive? That thing's been in there for a long time. They are still working to get that car back out to get some more valuable test time.
You know, you're right about that Judd engine car. It is quite fantastic. It looks right, it sounds right, and it's pretty new still, but it's running well. And I think this is probably a great future for a lot of private teams to take hold of a proven chassis like the Lola, the Reynard, even the Courage, get your Judd pack right and put it all together. And it's again an experienced team that's put this car together. I mean, Courage has been here for, well, it must be nearly 20 years ago since I first drove for him here, and he always builds a great car. The quality of his workmanship is fantastic. He has sponsors from Simmons, the aviation manufacturers, and they have great designers that kind of work for other people that do a bit of moonlighting for him. He's always made a great car. Very, very safe.
And the Judd engine itself, it's a V10. It's a derivative of the John Judd Formula One engine. Normally at 3.5 liter trim, they punch it out to 4 and then rein it in just a little bit. And it has great fuel economy. I mean, the ones that they run in the American Le Mans Championship in the States give the other teams fits, because this thing makes such good power and gets tremendous fuel economy. It's really a neat package, lightweight. You could work the car, balance it. I mean, it's a
very lightweight. It's under 300 pounds.
268, I believe.
That's outrageous, isn't it?
Look what it's done for Raffinelli.
Yes.
They've done a tremendous
an off
job.
there. An off. 12 Panos has come off.
That wasn't an off. That's just a little wide. He just had to mow some grass out there, and there wasn't anything serious. No harm, no foul. Let's go. Put it in gear and stand on the gas.
There's a lot of people got away with a lot of those little minor wobblies.
Well, that is a very slow corner there. That's one of the slowest corners. That's one of the slowest corners on the track.
Yes.
He probably got in there. There's a lot of rubbish on the outside. He probably got in just a little hot. He was probably looking at his mirror at that
That's
garage.
what I'm thinking. Yeah.
See, he got off a little wide. Whoa, come on, baby, turn. Give me away from that tire wall.
He didn't quite smoke the barrier there, so...
No, don't be too rough.
It's the French countryside's beautiful. He wanted to see a little bit more of it. That's all that was. Butch Leitzinger in the number 1 Caddy. He'll be back out on track in just a minute. We'll be back as well.